Okay, folks, we're going to get started. Just a friendly reminder, just going over some housekeeping for today. Please keep yourself on mute. When you have an opportunity, please modify your name to ensure the correct name is displayed, any preferred pronouns if desired, and the name of the organization you're representing. This call will be recorded. Our presentation will be recorded, so just ensure you're aware that this is being recorded. We will have a questions and answers section at the end of the presentation. There is a questions and answers text box at the bottom of the screen where you can input your questions that you may have, and at the end of the recording we'll go through those questions. We also have a question period and answer period that we'll be posting to our website by next week. We'll go over that timeline shortly, so please be patient with us as we get through those questions. Why don't we get started with the presentation? Folks are going to be dialing in as we are speaking. However, please continue to keep yourself mute, and we will open up any lines or audio at the end, but you can also submit your questions through the questions and answer comment section. All right, let's get started. So welcome to the information session for the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development first time grant, the Local Immigrant Integration and Inclusion Grant. This information session is intended to provide an overview of the grant eligibility, grant activities, grant requirements, and any questions you may have as we're getting ready to implement the grant. Let's move to the next section, just provide you a background of the grants and how we got here today. An introduction of our team. And so I'll start off with myself. My name is Odette Ford. I'm the manager of Immigrant Integration Initiatives here at GO-Biz, and I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Maria.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Martinez, and I'm a fellow on Odette's team, and I'll hand it over to Johan.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. I'm Johan Vivas. I'm the Immigrant Integration Analyst at GO-Biz. Back to you, Odette.
Great, thank you. And those for those that are new to this space, this immigrant integration portfolio is new to GO-Biz, and we are focusing on immigrant integration generally at a broad spectrum and supporting specifically with the lens on economic development and immigrants and inclusion. So just want to preface that for your background information. And so how we got here. So the Budget Act of 2022 established the Local Government and Immigrant Integration Initiatives program within GO-Biz. Out of this funding appropriation and statute, our team led extensive stakeholder engagement statewide, both with local governments who have existing Office of Immigrant Integration or New Americans, and also obviously local governments who either have immigration liaisons or immigration programming to seek input about eligible activities and intended goals of the grant. We also connected with various nonprofit partners, legislative staff, and other state departments regarding this grant. We wanted to ensure that we covered the intended goals and also developing the grant to ensure it was reflective of the intended funding and obviously in alignment with the statute as well. And so the Local Immigrant Integration and Inclusion Act provides $8.2 million in one-time funding to support the development or expansion of immigrant integration efforts, increase community trust, and enhance organizational capacity of local governments to support immigrant populations in California. Just a little bit of a brief overview of the request for proposal timeline. GO-Biz released the RFP on June 16th, 2023. We've held a separate information session, just emphasis on local governments, given that the intended applicants are local governments. Today, we're holding a broader information sessions targeting nonprofit organizations and the broader public or community organizations who want to understand a little bit more about the goals of the grants and how they can collaborate with local governments. We will have a questions and answers period from June 16th through the 27th. We will try to post or respond to your questions, but we do intend to release a more formal document on our website that will include frequently asked questions. And the deadline to submit a proposal by local governments is July 28th of 2023. So broadly speaking, the eligibility is in alignment with the Budget Act and the statute. And so we're binded by the requirements, obviously, in the statute and the intent of the budget. And as we discussed earlier, really we are hoping to boost the capacity of local governments in different communities throughout the state of California to either build that infrastructure or to expand initiatives that are already supporting immigrant integration. And so the local governments are the intended audience and applicants for this grant. And so let me cover the eligibility for who is eligible for this grant. So the local government shall meet the following criteria. The applicant must be a California city, county, or county and or city department, has an existing Office of Immigrant Affairs or New Americans, or designated immigrant affairs liaison, or administers public programs or benefits for immigrant populations included, but not limited to economic development, workforce development, CalFresh, CalWorks, refugee and resettlement programs, immigration legal services, and others that may apply, and must have experience administering state grants or contract funding. In the case that a local government is not able to or doesn't have the capacity to implement the activities that are listed in this grant, the local government may subcontract out to a nonprofit that meets the following criteria. The nonprofit must be a 501c3 or a 501c3-5, classified with the Internal Revenue Code, and has experience delivering eligible activities included in the local immigrant integration and inclusion grant, which we will cover a little bit and dive in a little bit more as part of this presentation. Has experience administering programs and benefits for immigrant populations, including but not limited to economic development, workforce development, CalFresh, CalWorks, refugee resettlement programs, immigration legal services, and other applicable programming as it relates to immigrant population, and has experience administering either city, county, or state grants or contract funding. Once again, we are hoping to ensure that local governments apply for this opportunity and that they take advantage of the funding that is available so that they can expand or grow their existing efforts on immigrant integration. In the case that they're not able to do that, they may partner with a nonprofit organization. However, the intended applicant is local governments. In the coming days, we will share a contact list of both the local governments who are intending to apply, so that if your organization is interested in providing the local government with insight on what activities they should be focusing on, you can connect with them and provide them with that feedback. I will share with all of you that we conducted a survey, a statewide survey, where we collected input from nonprofits already as well, and have shared some of those findings with local governments. But as part of the application process, local governments must engage with their constituents and nonprofits so that it could be reflective of what they end up applying regarding the activities within the grant. So that is a way that you can provide some input or insight. We will do the same with the local government. We have a list of nonprofits who we will share their contacts so that they can reach out and seek input. But if you also wish for us to share your information, if we don't have it already, please do share your contact information, and we'll bridge that connection gap. Thank you. Let's pass it on to the next section.
All right, thank you for that, Odette. So I'm going to go over the grant requirements as stipulated by the statute. The first of those requirements is that the grant funding shall not replace any existing funding or programming. The second requirement is that grantees are required to provide a plan to ensure continuity of funding for proposed activities after the one-time grant is awarded. This plan should include details on potential funding sources, partnerships, program modifications, and long-term goals to ensure the program's continuity and growth. So that could be through public-private partnerships, engaging philanthropies, etc. The third requirement is that applicants shall seek input from the public regarding the proposed activities. So we hope that local governments reach out to immigrant residents, community organizations, service providers representing or serving the jurisdiction's diverse demographics. And I will note that during our last info session with the local governments, we did request that interested local governments provide us with their contact information so that we can share that with the nonprofits that are interested in providing feedback. And then the last requirement is that any service or programming funded under the LIIG shall be accessible to immigrants regardless of status. So we won't ask for any of that information. All right, and then moving on over to the grant terms. So the grant terms will be modified based on funding availability. And we do give ourselves additional time to provide any amendments or to close out the agreements, so just any administrative processes. That period will run from September to November. Year 2 is contingent on funding availability. So the grant term period for the first year will run from September 1st, 2023 to November 30th, 2024. And then the service term period for year 1 is September 1st, 2023 to August 31st, 2024. And again, we're giving ourselves from September to November to close out any administrative things that need to be closed out. The second year, again, contingent on funding availability, will run from September 1st, 2024 to November 30th, 2025. And then the service term period will be September 1st, 2024 to August 31st, 2025. All right, and then moving on over to funding and eligible activities. GO-Biz will fund 1 to 2 local government staff positions to develop or expand immigrant integration efforts, increase community trust, and enhance the organizational capacity of local governments throughout the state of California. Local governments are encouraged to focus on 1 to 2 funded activities, but may propose additional activities. And we will go over those eligible activities shortly. All right, moving on over to target populations. So selected grantees will be asked to prioritize serving immigrants, refugees or asylees, unaccompanied minors, immigrant youth, immigrants residing in rural California, and hard to reach immigrant populations. And by that, we mean Black immigrants, Indigenous immigrants, undocumented folk, etc. And again, I do want to reiterate that any service or programming funded under the LIIG shall be accessible to immigrants regardless of immigration status, and documentation of status will not be required. All right, and then moving on over to the eligible activities. So we have categorized the eligible activities into 4 key pillars. The first of those is economic development. And what do we mean by that? That's essentially supporting immigrant entrepreneurs and businesses through various initiatives. So grantees can consider, sharing resources, training opportunities, mentorships, facilitating access to capital, assisting with market research strategies, business registration, licensing, permitting, and other administrative processes. Grantees can also consider developing industry-recognized apprenticeship programs to give immigrants the skills they need to succeed in their business ventures. Essentially, they can partner with trade unions, industry associations, vocational training providers to ensure immigrant workers have access to quality apprenticeship programs. And then they can also consider assisting with professional certification and workforce development training. Grantees can assist immigrants by helping them gather required documents, with their business planning, marketing, financial management, and just general legal compliance, etc. And then lastly, for this pillar, grantees can assist by providing digital and financial literacy training to immigrant residents. So essentially just assistance with getting them banked, with credit management, creating company websites, things of that nature. All right. And so the second pillar, social service navigation, that's essentially helping immigrants access essential social services they might be eligible for. So that could be either through government services or community resources. Local governments can consider case management services, determining eligibility, and then referring immigrants to those services they might be eligible for. And that can include public benefits, childcare, housing navigation, employment, educational services, access to healthcare, social adjustment, and immigration services. Grantees can also consider individualized assessments and cultural orientation to ensure smooth integration into their communities. And then lastly, for this pillar, grantees can consider education and outreach. That can be on available services and language support. So essentially that's developing and distributing materials such as brochures, flyers, posters. Ideally, that would be in prominent languages spoken in their region. Moving on over to the third pillar, interagency technical assistance. That's promoting collaboration among different levels of government and community organizations. So essentially just maintaining a line of communication to avoid duplication of work and just maximizing program effectiveness. Grantees can consider developing and implementing policies and best practices to serve immigrant residents, establishing interagency task forces and facilitating coordination. That would be a great opportunity for data sharing, for example. They can consider organizing meetings, workshops, capacity building events, providing technical assistance to internal and external departments on the importance of language access and cultural sensitivity. All right, and then for the final pillar, that's civic and community engagement. That's building partnerships with community organizations and expanding resources. So that's integrating immigrant residents to their wider community in whatever form that might look like. Grantees can consider leadership development programs for immigrant residents and unaccompanied youth. This can assist them with their public speaking skills and just other general leadership skills. Grantees can also consider promoting cross-cultural understanding through cultural exchanges. And then lastly, community resource fairs to connect immigrants with local services. So oftentimes in local communities, libraries are a great source of resources, not only through books, but oftentimes they provide access to computers. And then oftentimes local schools have free ESL, English as Second Language, workshops, courses, adult schools, etc. So just connecting them with the resources already available in their communities. And if you can see with these four pillars, we made them intentionally broad. Of course, local governments and local community organizations, you all know your communities best, but we did want to provide just some parameters and just some examples of activities that you might want to consider. The request for proposal announcement document on our website has a more extensive list of activities that we suggest. Grantees don't have to, do all of those activities, but they can consider one of those two general categories and propose activities, and then we will look at those proposals when they're submitted to us. But again, we do really encourage nonprofits to provide your input to your local governments, because again, you know your communities and what the needs are. And with that, I'll pass it on over to Maria when she'll discuss the review process and the application evaluation.
Yeah, so we're just gonna go ahead and get started with an overview of how GO-Biz is going to evaluate the applications that we receive. So the five primary factors that we're going to evaluate are the funding eligibility criteria, staffing capacity, organizational oversight and administrative capacity, information provided in the RFP and budget proposal, which can both be found in Exhibit A of the RFP. And lastly, we'll be prioritizing funding for local governments that serve rural or hard to reach populations and regions with a high density of immigrant populations. We will be, in order to identify those regions, we will be utilizing demographic data from the California Immigrant Data Portal and the Community Economic Resilience Fund to determine areas with a high immigrant population density. We will also be considering the needs and capacity to assist the target populations and regions language and cultural competency, and expertise in providing these kinds of services. We want to emphasize that GO-Biz reserves the right to distribute funding based on regional and programmatic needs and solicit additional applicants if necessary. So GO-Biz will be funding 1 to 2 staff positions in alignment with the applicant's current staffing salary rates, keeping in mind that salary rates may differ region by region. And applicants will be required to provide supporting documentation confirming this existing salary structure. GO-Biz will determine budget proposals based on the number of proposed staff to be hired or advance in operational costs. And lastly, applicants that are intending to subgrant may request a 15 to 20% administrative fee. And so here is a brief overview of the scoring criteria. So the proposals will be evaluated using the following sections in the scoring point scale. Nonprofit subgrantee questions will only be assessed to support the eligibility and capacity of the local government to subgrant and will not be scored. So the sections that we will be scoring is 1, the applicant overview, organizational capacity and services, administrative capacity, collaboration, the implementation plan, and the project budget, all for a total of 200 points. And within the RFP itself, you can, if you would like, you can refer back to the scoring breakdown and see kind of where the most weight is being identified. So we are going to be asking our applicants to identify an authorized representative that will carry out a variety of responsibilities during the application process and grant period. The primary role of the authorized representative is to serve as the principal contact for GO-Biz, and GO-Biz will communicate with your rep on program-related information. The rep will be responsible for submitting performance and financial reports. They will receive and distribute GO-Biz reimbursements to subgrantees if applicable, and any programmatic or agreement-related issues will flow through the authorized representative to their subgrantee in the agreement, and subgrantees are expected to contact their authorized representative when programmatic issues and questions arise. If an authorized representative were to designate a staff for any portion of these responsibilities, they must provide GO-Biz with a written statement confirming that they're acting on behalf of the authorized representative. And we are encouraging applicants to identify a second point of contact just so that we maintain those lines of communication. So now we're going to get into reporting. So GO-Biz has the right to conduct a programmatic and financial review of any grantee entity and subgrantee. Non-aggregated information collected from individuals participating in funded services won't constitute a record subject to disclosure under the Public Records Act. GO-Biz may withhold payments if reports are not received or are deemed incomplete or inadequate. And GO-Biz will also provide the grantees with a reporting template for the submission of quarterly financial and activity reports upon execution of the grant agreement. We will be requiring grantees to collect and report aggregated data that includes, but is not limited to, the following, such as the type of activity or service provided, the total number of individuals served, ethnicity and race, country of origin, language proficiency, age distribution, and gender. And lastly, I'll just be going over the reporting, not lastly, we'll be going over the reporting schedule. So the reporting schedule, as you can see here, are coming quarterly intervals. So there will be a reporting period, and then the report will be due at the end of that. You'll have about 2 weeks to collect that information and turn it over to us. And lastly, I'll be going over invoicing. So selected grantees may invoice GO-Biz for quarterly expenses and must submit these expense reports with the invoice, and grantees shall not exceed the award issued for services. So grant recipients will submit a quarterly invoice to us for eligible expenses that were incurred during each month, and invoices should be submitted within 15 calendar days after the end of each month, unless otherwise specified below in this table. And GO-Biz will provide grantees with an invoice and financial template upon execution of the grant agreement. And these dates, as well as the reporting dates, can both be found in the RFP. And I think with that, I'm turning it back over to Johan. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Maria. All right, so when it comes to application submission, to be considered for funding, all applicants must comply with the requirements described in the request for proposal. So incomplete, late, or altered application forms will not be accepted. To apply, applicants can submit a complete application with the attachments no later than 5 p.m. Pacific time on July 28, 2023, to immigrant-integration.initiatives@gobiz.ca.gov with the subject line FY for fiscal year 2022 through 24 LIIIG application. The review checklist, which is Appendix 2 in the RFP, has a complete list of documents that we're requesting. If anybody has any general questions, you can contact me directly. I will be serving as the grant manager, and my email is yoan.vivas, so that's my first and last name, Yoan Vivas, @gobiz.ca.gov. Or you can contact me directly at my cell phone at 916-827-8626. And then with that, I'll pass that on over to Odette.
Thank you, Maria and Yoan, for walking us through the overview. So we are going to head into our questions and answers. If you're able to use the Q&A chat to post your questions, that would be greatly appreciated. If not, you could also drop them in the chat box so that Maria can help us moderate that section. Again, just a friendly reminder, the intended applicant and funding is for local governments, nonprofit partners that may wish to provide input to those local governments on what the priorities and activities that they should focus on for this grant. You can do that by emailing us your name and your email so that we can connect you with them directly, or we can provide you a directory of who to contact. We want to start off with the Q&As in the checkbox first, and then we'll move it over to audio questions. I'm going to pause here and see if there's any questions.
I will go through the questions in order that we receive them in the chat. So the first one is, can an applicant only include one nonprofit, or may they propose subgranting to multiple nonprofits with different scopes of work?
Thank you for the question. So if the local government isn't able to apply directly and deliver the service directly, they may opt to subgrant out to a nonprofit. Ideally, we want to, there's only $8.2 million available for statewide initiatives. And so ideally what we would want is to fund only 1 to 2 staff per that county and or city. If there's multiple cities within local governments, then we would coordinate through the county, ideally. But ideally, we want to ensure that applicants are focused on 1 to 2 staff and also 1 to 2 activities.
The next question is, does the government/benefits program have to be specific to serving immigrants or inclusive of serving immigrants?
The intended target population here is immigrants, and we did provide a list of what that looks like. Also, the request for proposal announcement includes definitions of immigrants and the intended population as well. So it's targeted, to be clear, it's targeted for immigrant populations. And you can find the announcement on our website. We'll drop the link here as well. So you can visit our website where you can have access to the announcement and eligibility criteria.
The next question is, can a nonprofit apply on their own, or does it have to be in partnership with the local government?
No, a nonprofit cannot apply directly to this funding per statute and by law. The primary applicant should be a local government, and we did discuss the criteria of what a local government is and experience, and again encourage everyone to go back and review the RFP announcement for those details.
The next one is, who should we reach out to if we want to share our nonprofits information so that it can be shared with local governments?
As we previously mentioned, you can send it to our general inbox. Yoan, can you pull up the general inbox so that I can go through it? So it's immigrant integration.initiatives at gobiz.ca.gov. That would be the preferred way to share not only your name and point of contact and email, and that way we could pass that information to our local governments that are intending to apply. Again, it is up to the local governments to apply. This is not a mandated requirement, and so just want to preface that.
The next question is just wondering, how does an organization know if they are already on this list?
So what I would share with you all is that we did an extensive stakeholder engagement. And so at some point, either we connected with you directly over Zoom, or we connected you over a survey. And so if we have not made any other contacts, I would just assume we don't have your contact information. We would encourage you to email us your point of contact.
The next question is if there is an application link.
Yes, we could drop that in the chat now. Joanne, can you do that, please? Or let me see if I can look it up. Are you able to do that? You want to drop the link? We'll drop it here. If not, let me double check. Maria.
Yeah.
Get it. We'll get it at the end, so we can drop the link here.
Okay. The next question is, can more than one city department apply for the grant?
Yes. However, we are encouraging the counties to be the lead applicants. If there's multiple cities, then we would coordinate those multiple cities with the county. So ideally, it'd be the county as a primary and a subgrantee as the cities. In the case that the county does not apply, then we would look at individual cities and evaluate those proposals individually.
And how do we ensure that the county is aware of our nonprofit's capacity to provide these services as a subcontractor?
So it is up to the local government to decide whether they want to subgrant out services. And there are specific questions in our request for proposal to verify eligibility and experience, and in alignment with the statute as well.
Okay. And the next question is, what if my county or the city does not apply?
Unfortunately, only local governments are able to apply for this funding opportunity. It's not a mandate. It's a competitive bid process.
The next question is, can a municipality act as the primary grantee and partner with a nonprofit, or is the county supposed to be the primary only? Trying to understand the language in the RFP.
So to be clear, when we say local governments, it's the county and or city. And it could be the city office, it could be the county office, it could also be a department within the city, but they would have to confer internally with their internal structures to identify who would the applicant be. Only they can apply, and they could decide to subcontract services if they deem needed.
And the last question I'm seeing in the chat is, if a local government plans to subgrant to a nonprofit, should the application questions around the applicant overview, organizational capacity, and administrative capacity be focused on the local government entity or the nonprofit?
So there's subsections, one directly for the local government and then the subgrantee. So they're specific to that. However, the local government must meet all the eligibility requirements, and they also must meet the criteria and capacity to administer a grant and subgrant out services.
Okay. Now I'm moving over to the Q&A section. Someone is wondering if you can clarify how much local governments can apply for.
Yes, absolutely. So there is no set amount. So we are intending to fund 1 to 2 staff positions. So this is a staffing model. And so depending on the proposal and whether local governments are looking to fund 1 to 2 positions, we would ask them to share one, what activities office are planning to apply for within the grant, and also what the salary rate is within their local jurisdiction, and we would request obviously some supporting documents to support the salary. So it's salary based. So for example, San Francisco salary may be a little bit higher than someone maybe located in the rural region, right? Or vice versa. And so it would depend on local salary rates.
The next question that I'm seeing is, how many grants do you anticipate making and what will be the grant amount range?
As previously mentioned, we don't have set amounts range. It depends on how many local governments apply. There's obviously only 8.2 million available one-time funding, and therefore it's contingent on how many applicants we receive, how competitive their application is. And as we mentioned previously, we are prioritizing hard-to-reach rural regions with high density of immigrant populations.
And this is a question I don't think we've gotten before. Are nonprofit partners allowed to accept invitations from more than one government offices in different regions for this work?
Ideally, no. We want to ensure that we focus our efforts in local, obviously, regions, ensuring that the local governments are really building their infrastructure to service and improve their service capacity for immigrant populations. And so there's only the exception. If they're not able to do that, then they would partner up with a nonprofit organization.
The next question is, can more than one local government apply together?
Not understanding what that looks like, but ideally it would be the county, and then it would fall through the city.
Mhm.
So one city, sorry, so one city, one county per the state of California.
Okay. The next question is, are legal services included as eligible activities in the social service navigation category?
No. So as we discussed the service criteria and examples, it is not necessarily a direct service, and we are not funding legal services.
Is there a minimum number of input that applicants must solicit from the public?
No. However, we have asked in the application process for local governments to describe who they engaged and what the process was to engage either nonprofit or the public on priorities of activities they intend to apply for.
Okay. The next question is, are local governments with immigration offices more or less likely to subgrant to nonprofits?
Unfortunately, I can't answer that question. It is up to the local governments to determine the need to do that. It's a case by case. They would have to make that assessment.
Okay. And back in the chat, if local governments partner with local nonprofits, the subaward is not part of the award made to the local government if it is a staffing model award to local governments. I think it was a clarifying question.
So if I understand this question correct, if the local government is not intended to provide the direct activities, then they would, if they're able to, they would subgrant out those activities to the nonprofit. The nonprofit would get the staffing positions. The local government is eligible for about 15 to 20% admin fee to administer the grants. So they would report to the state, outcomes and activities, expenses, and would be accountable for the grant, but the actual staffing award would go to the nonprofit.
Okay. So the question that I'm seeing now is, the RFP mentioned immigration legal services are eligible. I think they're just wondering whether or not we can staff or the staff can work on legal services as opposed to us directly funding legal services.
No, we are not funding legal services. The state of California has made large investments on legal services statewide. So there's specific initiatives already in the state of California focusing on those efforts. There's also local funding and jurisdictions focused on those efforts. The funding here is intended to focus on the four broader categories, and it's really intended to boost the local government's capacity to better serve immigrant communities.
Let's see. Can the sub-awardee nonprofit also request an administrative fee?
No. They will have opportunity to obviously list out operational expenses, indirect costs, etc. However, it would only be the staffing that we would cover for the direct activities.
If or how many grants we plan to award for the RFP?
That's a really good question. And so, as you all know, there's only $8.2 million available for funding. And so it will be contingent on the applications that we receive, and also the number of positions that folks propose. As we previously had discussed, we have some priorities, which is ensuring that we are funding rural regions, hard to reach populations, but also populations where there are high density immigrant populations. And obviously, also having strong applications that meet the eligibility and also meet the scoring criteria. So to be determined.
Thank you. The next two questions are wondering if there is an amount per award that we're going to be distributing.
As previously noted, we are encouraging the counties to be the primary applicants. And if there is additional cities within that county, we are encouraging the counties to apply directly. And the county would do sub-awards, but each basically local entity can request 1 to 2 staffing positions. So the amount will be contingent in alignment with the staffing rates within that local government. So just to give you an example, salaries in San Diego are probably going to be different in Kern County, right? Depending on local government's salary rates.
The next question is if there is a requirement or scoring benefit for a local match that is existing staff, consultants, or grant programs focused on the eligible activities.
Let me repeat this. The question is if there's an existing matching grant, could some of this funding pay for that, some of that balance? Yes, I think so. We don't, if there's different proposals where you are paying from a different funding source for a staff time, half time, and you're looking to pay another half time through this funding, that is allowable. Again, we just do not, by law, can replace any existing funding or services with this funding.
The next question is if there's any scoring benefit to going with a larger group through a county level government.
There is no, I would say, benefit. There's just a general set of criteria how we're going to weigh applications. Administratively, it is best to have the county apply and then strategize on what local cities and or departments want to like subcontract from that. But we would let those groups decide how they want to apply.
Okay, and then 2 clarifying questions. So one, just confirming that the grant can only cover staffing and not program delivery.
Correct. So this grant is intended for organizational staff capacity, not delivery of direct assistance. So for example, we would not be issuing benefits to the public. There's a difference between delivering information, outreach, intergovernmental development of policies and procedures and best practices, but not a direct assistance to the public.
Okay. And then there's one more clarifying question on caps. So just clarifying if there is a cap per proposal that is 100K per award or 500K?
There is no cap, it's salary based. So for example, if Sacramento County was applying and they were proposing 1 staff to 2 staff, they would say, we're going to hire a coordinator and this is the salary range within our county and or city, and these are the ranges, right? And so it's a kind of like a 1-to-1 assessment based on the county salary rates. As mentioned previously, one county could have like a 65K salary, which another one could be 75, depending on regional distribution and rates.
And one more clarifying question, is more weight given to a county application than a municipal one?
No, but we do encourage folks to collaborate. And so hopefully the counties will lead the application process and we can determine awards for cities.
So our next question is wondering if the grant is for new positions to increase capacity with the intention that local governments then make the positions permanent.
There could be a variety of strategies. If you are also just new to this area and don't actually have an office, but are thinking about creating new positions, the intent is, yes, to sustain the position or sustained expansion of programming that could be developed through this grant.
For this next question, the question is, can a government agency partner with a CBO to apply for a grant each?
So our intent is to fund local governments to build up their capacity. In the case that the local government does not have the capacity to lead this initiative, we would encourage them to work with a nonprofit to be the subgrantee. However, as part of the request for proposal, we would need to have a detailed overview of why that is not possible. But yes, that there is a possibility to partner with a nonprofit to deliver the service, but it needs to be one or the other. It can't be both the nonprofit and the local government together.
Those are all the questions in the chat at this time.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additional questions that they'd like to pose? And I'm happy to unmute you if you like that. Just raise your hand or flag us down. Okay, it doesn't sound that there's additional questions. So we just want to thank you for your time and for attending this information session. This recording will be posted on our website. If you'd like to get a copy of the PowerPoint, please do reach out to us and we may post it on our website or just send it directly. If you have any additional questions, our information is posted here. Again, we just encourage everyone here to reach out to our general inbox, immigration integration .initiatives@gobiz.ca.gov. If you'd like to post additional questions, please reach out to Johan Vivas, and alternative myself, Objet, and Maria, if you'd like to connect with us. But we look forward to receiving your proposals and are excited to launch this new initiative with your partnership. I would ask that if you are considering applying, please do send us an email with your contact information. We do want to share this information with our nonprofit partners that would love to give you some input and to support your proposal as well, since that is a requirement to engage with nonprofits and the public. Again, thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.